Alright, so people have been asking me to review the Dark Knight Rises Nokia trailer, and I just figured, why not just review the movie? Sounds logical. The Dark Knight Rises. Alright, so The Dark Knight Rises is the third and final chapter to Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. I guess it's called that, even though the first one's Batman Begins. Weird. And The Dark Knight Rises is set 8 years after the events of The Dark Knight. Yeah, it's been 8 years since the Joker tried to burn Gotham to the ground and the whole Harvey Dent thing. You know, you've seen the movie. If you haven't, really? And now there's a new villain that has shown his face in Gotham City, and that is Bane. And this is Bane's opportunity, man. He has set foot in Gotham at the perfect time. Peace was achieved in Gotham based on a lie, and I like seeing that. At the beginning of this movie, you see how the characters are still dealing with that, even though it's been 8 years, so it's not like, oh yeah, Dark Knight happened, now it's Dark Knight Rises. Dark Knight does not really feed into the Dark Knight Rises. I mean, it's been 8 years, how could it? No, the people are still dealing with the fact that they had to cover up a lie. That's what a concluding chapter of a trilogy should do. Feed off of the relevance and momentum. Christopher Nolan does that like a master in this movie. And I was really surprised at where the characters are in this movie. I mean, it's been 8 years. What's Bruce Wayne up to? What's Gordon up to? How are they doing? I just saw and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have called that. And now Bane steps into Gotham and Bruce Wayne's like, oh, I need to be Batman again, even though it's been 8 years. Batman's been MIA for 8 years. He's really rusty at this point, but he has to put on the cape and cowl and fight Bane. But as we all know, there's more to being Batman than just putting on a suit. He has to become the Dark Knight, and as you saw in the teaser trailer, he tells Gordon, he's like, what if he doesn't exist anymore? And when I say rusty, I mean rusty. Batman could take a good look at himself and be like, my God, I am wearing hockey pads. Batman taking on Bane at this point is kind of like when you're playing an MMO or an RPG, and you're fighting these guys that are crazy hard, they're all out-leveled, they're all like these mythic, epic elites, and you're like, I shouldn't be here right now. It's like that, only Batman has no choice. He can't go AoE grind. He just has to take this on. Yeah, it sucks to be that dude. Tom Hardy as Bane. I loved him. This dude is menacing. Bane's mask, if you see it in the comic books, his eyes are covered. But in this movie, his mouth is covered and his eyes are exposed. That was a really interesting change for me, but it worked in this movie because the expressions he has in his eyes, you're like, yeah, that's an intense dude. If his eyes were completely covered up, I don't think Bane would be as menacing as he is in The Dark Knight Rises. Bane is undeniably the biggest threat that Gotham has ever faced. And they do a really good job at illustrating that. He's intellectual, he's physically superior to Batman. That's one of the things Alfred brings up. He's like, dude, look at this guy. You have never taken on someone like this. It would have been hard in your prime. Now you're one rusty Batman. Alfred has to deal with this stuff too. He's like, I have a feeling it's not gonna work out for you, man. Don't do this. Bane's voice is a funny thing. You know, I gave Bane's voice shit when I saw the prologue. I was like, it was kind of hard to understand. In The Dark Knight Rises, he was a lot easier to understand. There's still some times where you're like, but it's not too bad. If for nothing else, you really get the point of what he's saying. You're like, yeah, he's getting a little intense and guys are getting their asses kicked and I gotcha. Bane's angry. But for the most part, I understood his voice. The Bane's voice for your ears is like 3D to your eyes. You know when you watch a 3D movie and you're like, all right, it'll take a minute to really adjust to this, then I'll be fine. That's Bane's voice. You hear him and you're like, all right, it's gonna take a moment to adjust to this, then I'll be fine. And it all works out for you. A lot easier to understand, but there will be a couple times where you're like, I didn't quite understand what he said. And I love the fact that even Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is relevant. He's this idealistic cop. He's like if Jim Gordon and Harvey Dent had a kid, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And the biggest surprise in The Dark Knight Rises is a character that I loved, and that is Anne Hathaway as Catwoman. Yeah, you heard that right. She kicked complete ass as Catwoman. I mean, in the trailers, all you really saw her do, except one axe kick she does to a dude's head, is she talked. But there is more to being Catwoman than talking, just like there's more to being Batman than putting on a cape and cowl. She has the persona down. She's manipulative. She's smart. She's cunning. She's sexy. I really do mean sexy, too. She's sexy. But she also kicks ass. She knows how to throw down. You put a gun to her face, she's going to snap your wrist and shove that gun up your ass. That's all I'm saying. Hope you like coughing 9mm bullets. It's going up there. And a couple of times you're like, she's like little Batman. She's awesome. I think Anne Hathaway did a great job as Catwoman, and personally, I believe she's the best Catwoman ever put on the big screen. Sorry, people who like slutty Michelle Pfeiffer in Heat. Anne Hathaway is just better and more realistic. A couple of times in this movie, there were a couple of what I call quick fixes. I mean, there are these hurdles in the movie, and you're like, oh, that's gonna be tough to overcome. Boom, quick fix, it's fixed. Yeah, just put on this magical robotic knee brace, and oh, that's done. What? Oh, okay, I guess so. And yes, this movie is undeniably long. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes. You're watching it, you're like, this is a long movie, but at no point did I ever think to myself, it's too long. In fact, I would not have minded the movie being like 3.5 hours long. I mean, there's a lot that happens in The Dark Knight Rises. As such, they have to move the plot along. This unfortunately means less screen time with some of the characters we've grown to love. Like take Alfred, for example. There's not a lot of Alfred in this movie. Alfred is us, you know, he's our eyes. He's the comedy relief. I missed him in this movie. There was not a lot of him. Made me sad. And there's this one scene, it's a situation. I would have liked to have seen that situation be like a half an hour longer. I'm just saying, if there is a director's cut of The Dark Knight Rises that comes out and it's like 3.5 hours long, I will buy it with a big smile on my face. Other than that, this movie is epic and it goes in directions that you're not even expecting. You're like, I was completely not expecting that, and that is awesome. And if I'm being objective, I think one of the gripes that people might have with this movie is that they're unprepared for the directions that this movie goes. I'm just saying, people might be like, I didn't know it was gonna go that direction. I was unprepared for it. I don't exactly like it. And that's not a negative in the movie. That's just a negative in human nature. That's actually a plus to the movie. I could not compliment the movie more than saying that it's an epic that caught me by surprise. Whenever a movie can surprise me on an epic scale like that by going in a direction that I didn't even see coming, that's never a bad thing. I'm just saying. And Bane Pierce. I feel like Bane Pierce are gonna be like, actually, that's not Bane's origin story. And I get it, but Christopher Nolan in Batman Begins established that he can take artistic license with a character and deliver a badass Batman movie. And he does that in The Dark Knight Rises. I would almost argue that he takes the most amount of artistic license with Bane's character than he has in any of the other characters of his other Batman movies. However, the epic that he gives us vastly outweighs the artistic license that he takes with the characters. If you're a comic book fanatic that can just put that aside and enjoy The Dark Knight Rises as a movie, I promise you, you will probably enjoy it. I don't know how promise and probably can go hand in hand, but that's the guarantee I make. So The Dark Knight Rises is a really satisfying conclusion to an epic Batman trilogy. I honestly think this is the first comic book movie trilogy in which the third one is also great. It's usually first one good, second one good, third one, no. Now we have 3 solid Awesometacular movies because The Dark Knight Rises is Awesometacular. So your favorite Christopher Nolan Batman movie? Me, they're all great, but I prefer The Dark Knight above the others, personally. And that's just a personal thing with me. The Joker is one of my favorite characters of all time. I like where Gotham was, just trying to crawl out of the wreckage of its own damnation, and this unstoppable hurricane is going through and just slaughtering everyone, trying to make Batman break, and successfully making Harvey Dent break. Just in terms of where Gotham was, the villain they had in it, and where the characters went in the movie, I thought it was the best. Which is another really interesting thing about the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. They're all so great, yet so different. They touch on different aspects and they have such different tones that if someone was like, oh, I like this one the best, I can't ever argue them. Someone likes Batman Begins the best, great. Dark Knight, fantastic. Dark Knight Rises, I getcha. I mean, really, that is how a trilogy should be. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, or The Dark Knight Rises. What is your favorite? Comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.